In this video, I'm going to tell you the story of Corvus Glaive, the leader of Thanos' Black Order, and the Black Order member with the most deaths. So while most of the rest of the members of the Black Order first appeared in Infinity #1, Corvus Glaive actually appeared in the Free Comic Book Day Infinity Preview issue. I'm not really sure how to describe this. Every important story thing in that issue is also in Infinity. Like this little story that he comes from is there too. It's written by Jonathan Hickman, with art by Jim Chung, Mark Morales, Justin Ponzor, and Joe Caramagna. I would say Corvus is maybe the most straightforward member of the Black Order. He is the scary, evil, spindly looking one. His name, Corvus Glaive. Corvus is, I think, the scientific term for crow, or the species of birds that crows and ravens, I believe, are both part of. Glaive is the weapon that he carries. He is a guy who loves to kill. He's also very smart. He's Thanos' lead tactician. He's an incredibly skilled fighter without his magic glaive, and the glaive gives him a couple of powers, which we'll get to. He shows up with the rest of these guys in the Infinity book where Thanos is looking for his son Thane. He goes to find him. They fight the Avengers. Corvus is killed. Corvus gets completely destroyed, except his glaive is not destroyed. As far as origin, we don't know a ton about any of these guys, although we might know the most about Corvus Glaive. He was a member of an alien race who, when Thanos showed up, betrayed his alien race to ascend to a seat of power in Thanos' army. He and the rest of these guys do this too, but he speaks about it the most, views Thanos as a god. So everything he's doing because God is there telling him to do it, as opposed to, say, Black Swan, who's just kind of along for the ride. Corvus describes himself as Black Dwarf or Cull Obsidian's brother, and I believe Cull Obsidian also uses that word. However, sometimes characters are described in this way when talking about Thanos, where you're a daughter of Thanos. It's like this kind of adopted daughter, the same way that you would maybe describe like a nun as a sister or something like that. What I guess I'm saying is, I'm not incredibly clear on whether these characters are actually brothers, like they were born and raised together, or they just both showed up at Thanos' army around the same time. They obviously don't look very much like each other, but they do function as sort of a family, especially this three: Corvus, Black Dwarf, aka Cull Obsidian, and Proxima Midnight. Proxima Midnight is Corvus Glaive's wife. He is married. I don't know what that means. I don't know if he has like a ring, he went through a ceremony, they went to like a priest, like the Universal Church of Truth or something for the Guardians of the Galaxy comics. I don't know. But whatever it is, he is technically married to her, which is funny because Cull was also in love with her, but then Corvus was like, hey, I'm in love with her. And he was like, oh, cool. Absolutely. You do you, buddy. And so, you know, Corvus is in charge there. And Corvus, as the leader of this team, is very like efficient and quick, and he's like a scalpel, but also he can kill everybody who wants. He's very serious. In his issue of the Black Order comic, he talks about how he's not funny, and he's like, I'm a little bit funny, right? And everybody's like, you're not like the funny one. And he's like, you sure? I kind of think I make like some pretty clever jokes. And everybody's just like, not really, dude. And he is very scary looking. He's designed specifically to look like kind of the opposite of Thanos, where Thanos is this big, round, strong, buff guy. He's much smaller. He's got this hunched over posture. He's wearing a lot of flowing robes. He's kind of dirty. He's got like big gnarly teeth. But he, more than anybody else, is trusted by Thanos to carry out whatever duties Thanos is up for. So if he's trying to find something, if he's trying to get a tribute from some of the planets that he's in charge of, Corvus Glaive is usually the one he sends to do that. And Corvus Glaive seems like a good leader. The members of the Black Order seem to like him. There's really not a lot of discord among this group. They're very welcoming when it comes to bringing Black Swan in. He's fine with it, and she seems to fit in pretty well. As for like what the Black Order is, they are a group of mercenaries that just work for Thanos. But when Thanos goes away, this group still exists, and they're led by someone, but Corvus is still the field general of this group. Like everybody in the Black Order knows Corvus is in charge. So they go to try to capture Thanos' son. Hyperion kills Corvus Glaive, like destroys him, except he does not destroy the glaive. So this big weapon that Corvus Glaive carries, which I assume he named himself after. I cannot imagine he was named Corvus Glaive and then he found the glaive, although like Arnie Hammer is related to the person that owns Armand Hammer baking soda, but he's not named after that. So it's like sometimes I guess maybe it's a coincidence, but either way, Corvus Glaive has this magical glaive. It's got a really sharp edge. It can cut through an atom, so that sounds useful, which usually just means it can cut characters like Hyperion or like Hulk. Characters that are invulnerable to pretty much everything else can get cut by the glaive, which like this is comics, so like we don't even know what this thing's made out of, but it's like, yeah, it's one of those things where like you have a character who's like, I'm indestructible, and then like some other guy comes up and he's like, no, this sword is built out of destructibilium and it can destroy it. And it's like, okay, well, I thought that was indestructible. I guess it's not. But like there's a list of metals that are actually better than the one that we thought was the best. But it makes sense as the universe gets bigger, we're finding more things. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So Corvus's glaive, very sharp. Also, It is magic, so if he is killed, but the glaive is not destroyed, he regenerates from the glaive. That's actually how Thanos and Proxima end up escaping. Proxima is holding the glaive and he just starts regenerating in this big amber prison. So Corvus joins the Cabal, works for Thanos a little bit more, then Secret Wars happens, but when that's over, Thanos is off the board for a while, so Corvus goes back to the Black Order seat of power and just takes over. He rules like an entire quadrant of the galaxy, and it's so funny because in this book, the Thanos Volume 2, the first issue is just everybody going, man, Corvus is crushing it. All the planets are like, this is actually pretty good, and he's tough but fair. Like all the feedback cards are coming up as 10s. Corvus Glaive is the best boss ever. And then Thanos comes back and he's like, obviously I'm in charge. And Corvus is like, come on, man, I was just doing so well. And Thanos destroys the glaive and then kills Corvus. Well, he gives the glaive to Corvus and he's like, you kill yourself now because I'm going to kill you later. Corvus is resurrected for that fight between the Grandmaster and the Challenger that the whole Black Order is resurrected for. And then after that, he's just kind of out, working. As of now, I'm not sure where this character is, but like I was saying when I was talking about Black Swan and some of the other ones, they were pretty aimless without Thanos. But when they found out about the superhero or villain named Star, who had an Infinity Stone inside of her, I believe it was the Reality Stone, they went to get that and it was too hard. And then they all realized none of them really wanted to do this anymore, so they just moved on. I don't know where this character is now. He shows up in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He is the leader of the group, it seems. He's the one who Thanos tells to fire on Scarlet Witch, which is interesting because Corvus says, but sire, our troops, which the thing that got Corvus on this team was that time he killed all his own troops for Thanos. So it's like, that's not what you do. Also, Corvus Glaive is killed in Infinity War with the glaive, and he dies, and he never comes back. So it's like, we almost have an opposite version of Corvus Glaive in the MCU. He's not an incredibly good fighter. He's okay, but like he can't take the Vision, which the Vision isn't that incredible. And then he sneaks around for a little bit during the Wakanda fight and gets killed by Vision. I can't remember. I believe he's killed by Nebula again during the big Endgame fight. And I imagine these characters, because they got snapped out of existence, are never coming back. So do I think this version of the MCU, Corvus Glaive, is a good representation of the one from the comics? Like, he looked good, and he sounded right. I think Ebony Maw sort of felt like the leader of that group because he just did most of the talking, but they were separated into two groups. So like Corvus Glaive, you could see him leading this team. But as far as like what he did, his glaive wasn't as interesting as it is in the comics because it cannot resurrect him. In fact, it was used to kill him. And he was like, sire, I don't want to sacrifice our troops, even though that is what he is most known for doing. You could say maybe if it's like, oh, Proxima Midnight's there, he doesn't want her to get killed. But in that situation, I do think he would still sacrifice her. If Thanos told him to do something, he would do it. Like, again, he is his god. So with Marvel Snaps, I haven't used the word Marvel Snap yet in this video, but we're talking about the character from the comics, a little bit of him in the MCU. He's been on most of the animated shows as well because they do a lot of Thanos stuff on those new shows. I don't really watch too many of them, so I know he's been on them. And he's been in the video games. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 featured the Infinity Stones and Black Order and Thanos in a big way. But again, like all the rest of these Black Order guys, even though Thanos is this very historical comic book character, Corvus is not. He is, less than 20 years old, which I think comes as a surprise considering the amount of history some of these characters have and some of them actually don't have. But anyway, in Marvel Snap, Corvus Glaive is a 3-cost 5 power with the on-reveal ability, discard 2 cards from your hand to get +1 max energy. So I think what they're going for is pretty clear here. Corvus in the comics sacrificed his own troops to gain Thanos' favor. In this situation, you're discarding 2 cards out of your hand to get 1 more energy, which is a huge bonus. Like, getting an extra energy, especially on turn 3, can set you up a lot of opportunities going forward. With the 3/5 stat line, like, he's fine. I think this card is interesting because of Proxima Midnight's power, which we'll get to next week. I think you could have maybe switched their abilities. Like, I think he could have his ability or her ability because her ability is about her getting discarded and then showing up again. I kind of assumed when I heard Corvus Glaive was getting a power and snap, it would be that. It'd be some sort of like when this card is discarded from your hand, it shows up on the field somewhere. I understand what they were going for, honestly. Out of all the members of the Black Order that have been introduced so far in Marvel Snap, Corvus Glaive is probably the most faithful to his comic counterpart, so that's cool. He also, unlike most of the rest of these guys, has 2 variants. There's obviously the base card by Ryan Kincaid and Edward Mello, but the Inyuk Lee version, which is the Spotlight Cash, which is great, is the Spotlight Cash, and like everybody got those. I believe those are all the covers from the Black Order series, but there is actually another Corvus Glaive by Seth Adams that looks very cool. So I complained last week that Marvel Snap doesn't have a lot of variants for cards that are getting released now, unless they're like really popular cards and characters. Like I assume War Machine will probably like 3 or 4 variants when he drops. But some of these other guys who aren't the highest profile characters tend to have 0 variants that you cannot get outside of Spotlight caches. So I'm glad that he's got one here. So next week, we're going to wrap this up talking about Proxima Midnight. I'll also talk a little bit about Ebony Maw in that video as well. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. I make videos like this once every week or so, talking about the characters in Marvel Comics, relating them to Marvel Snap. So even if you don't like Marvel Snap, you can still get something out of it. And I make other videos on this channel talking about Madam Web or the cast for the Fantastic Four movie. So subscribe here. My other channel is called Nando V Movies. Subscribe there. I'm all those things on Nebula, so follow me there. That's all I got. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time.